You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
We should do a blooper reel at sometime. All right. Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
Fran, you said that with like bravado. Is that a word?
Yeah. Bravado.
Bravado. Yeah, we were just talking
you
about
like
that
that?
blooper reel. Yeah, you really kicked on your radio voice.
Wow. I might have a little bit of be self-conscious because I've had now we have customers calling that aren't even sure. Like before everyone would think I'm a woman. Now they're just not even positive. So I'm trying to work on.
Anyway, I'm Tom Kinezic, and welcome to episode 55 of Native Plants Healthy Planet. Again, this is The Buzz, and where we like to have a little fun. And Fran, I got to ask you, Are we allowed to get off this ride yet? This is getting things have been a little too crazy, and I'm ready for it to stop.
For our listeners that maybe, I know a lot of our customers and industry colleagues listen to the podcast, but for our customers that maybe aren't aware, the hard part about our industry is that it's very season oriented. So spring, our business is a little bit different, but in the nursery industry, I want to say like 75% of your business happens in like March, April, May, and June, and then it kind of tapers off, and there's periods of extreme intensity and then dead, and it's like a switch too. So we're a little more level because it's wetland plantings, and you can plant a little bit in the summer and the fall. And, I'm not saying that it doesn't spike again in the fall, but one of our best seasons was in the fall, was a fall season for us, 2019. So it's crazy right now, man. This is one of the busiest springs that I can remember in quite some time.
I don't want to sound like I'm complaining too much, but then I looked at our balance sheet or our P&L statement. I'm like, oh, we only have that much money? I feel like we're working way harder than that. But it's a lot nicer than last year. Last year was kind of like a shock.
Yes.
And we're seeing a good rebound. But I'm tired of I'm tired.
I think the difference between this year and like last year was tapering off. Like people were trying to get stuff done before all the regulations we're just kicking in now. Yeah. Like the next couple, like we're crazy, and the next couple weeks are going to be just as crazy. And we're nearing a holiday.
Yeah, and that which is a nice. I'm ready for a three-day weekend. Even though when you're in this business, it's you're still working. It's just not the same. Like I'll be out here and I'm going to be packing some orders for my side business, and I'm going to be checking water and going through and just making sure everything looks okay. Speaking of checking water, that was fun the other day. We've had super hot temperatures here, and so that's been stressful.
And it's fluctuating. We're going from 90.
Yeah, it was 96
like
over
10
the weekend.
days without rain, 96, and now this weekend it's going to be rainy and 57 here.
Yeah, so just riding around and making sure everything's wet, and then on Sunday 2 sprinkler heads blew and I didn't catch it, and then there goes half a greenhouse worth of stuff, and
that was sold.
And that was not fun to find out on Tuesday morning when we finally started to show.
It's hard to have this conversation without sounding like you're complaining. Because obviously we love what we do, but it's difficult. There's a lot of frustrations because you're packing so much into such a small period of time. And wholesale is different. When you walk into a garden center, like not a small garden center, when you walk into a big garden center, there's a staff of people there to help you. Like for here in a wholesale model, I am the salesperson. Not saying that there's not overflow. You do seed sales like I do and Noel, and I do the bulk of the plant sales.
Yes, if someone calls up and Fran's busy, just about everyone else in the office here can pick up the phone and at least not do it as well as you can, but it can help and maybe take an order as long as the person knows what they want.
But our model is, because we're wholesale to the trade, we're dealing with architects, engineers, people that know what they want. So they don't really need assistance. Most of the time. They don't need assistance. They can call up and say, this is the situation I have. I need these plants. Yep. do you have them? And we become more of a supply entity,
Mm-hmm.
and we can offer good prices because of that. Like
Yeah.
I could literally pick up the phone and take a $50,000 order in 5 minutes and move on. And retail, you're not doing that. You could spend an hour and get a $10 order. And that's like we're wholesale, and people are so pumped up about what we do, they want to buy from us and they can't, but we'll get phone calls where they'll want to take 15 minutes and explain their situation. And I know that I can't help them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's frustrating for them. It's frustrating for us. It's
and part of that's just recognizing that you're not going to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
That's like if I was giving like business advice or even just life advice, it's just recognizing you're not going to make everyone happy. It's like if you, a good example is my dad talks about a lot, and he'd talk about Target versus Walmart. He's like, oh, every time I go into Target, there's nothing there. Like they never have what I'm looking for, but I go to Walmart, it's there.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, Target's not looking for your money. They're looking for people like my wife who's early 30s, just had a baby, and they can get everything they need at Target. But yeah, they're not going to get a socket wrench and a bunch of like hardware.
And not saying that Target doesn't want his money.
Yeah.
But your dad is a better fit for Walmart, and that's their model, and that's your dad is the customer that Walmart wants. They're going to do good business with.
When my dad walks into Target, he's in theory wasting their time.
Yeah.
He's asking
wasting
people
his
and looking
time
for stuff, and they don't have it because most of their clientele doesn't want it. And that's switching back to retail. I have a retail plant side business, and
which is making you doubly crazy right now.
Oh yeah. So I've been working from like 7 a.m. doing computer stuff when I first wake up. I come in here from like 8 to 5, sometimes 5:30, sometimes 6.
Yeah.
And then once I'm done, I'm out there doing more of the retail stuff. And then the other night I went home at 11:30.
Yeah.
So just packing UPS boxes until I couldn't anymore. And then Saturdays, Sundays, I'm right back at it. I'm doing it almost all day. So it's driving my wife crazy too, because I'm not home.
And it's funny when you think about it. Like I spend all day talking.
Yep.
Which I love to talk. Obviously we do this, but like at some point you have to turn it off and you have to be able to recharge. I'm also an introvert, so I like periods of like just
quiet,
so
like inner thoughts.
So at some point, and fortunately Agatha is an introvert as well, so we can sit in silence and be perfectly thrilled, but it's, you got to love what you do or you can't do it. Like we're here every day because we love it, but at some point you're like, I kind of need to not think about it or not talk about it.
You get to this time of year and it's like, okay, I need a break. I need to, but that comes around 4th of July, which is perfect time too. We only have another month.
And then as soon as you get that break, you're like, I need something to do. I gotta start working on this.
Cool.
So, but that's kind of an insight. Like I know we've had the rooted discussion on the native plant industry, and we kind of talked about herbaceous. We're going to do that again with the woody side of it. We have one lined up for this summer, but that just kind of gives you a little bit of insight of what's going on. Even for as helpful we are, I know there's times I may be on a phone call and I may be short, and I may not be able to give the information they want, or it's just really difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it's a
difficult balance.
It's not just the one person who's calling in. It's 40, 50. And then you have a bunch of emails, and now you have everything from the website building up. So it's, you want to help everyone, but again, like you're saying, you have that person on the phone and you're like, they're explaining the whole thing. I can't help them. Yeah. And my time would be better spent helping people I can help and making them happy versus trying to help this.
We're not set up that mediocre way, but they want to deal with us. Yep. They love us and they want to deal with us, but we don't provide the service that they're asking for, and they'd be less frustrated going to a place that provides the service that was
want. The model behind Pinelands Direct. Like I said, my side business was, man, I don't necessarily this sounds really bad when I say it, but the customer service end of things and like the plant recommendations, the design part of thing, that's not my strong suit. Well, I do have the opportunity to provide really low cost plants that are really high quality, and for people that know what they want or need maybe some slight instruction. Oh yeah, you can get a really good deal that you're not getting elsewhere. But if you need the extra help and care through the whole process, well, there's better fits. And I know people get frustrated because they're asking me all these questions. I'm like, eventually I don't want to say I stop responding, but I get to a point where I can't help them as much as they need the help, because it's not worth the $100 when I can get that somewhere else.
It's a misunderstanding of what like I had someone email or call the other day. I'm not going to say who it was, but I had someone call that's a customer that wanted to send me photos of his basement because he wanted me to tell him what plants would wick moisture away from his basement. And I was like, you really need an engineer or a consultant. Like, and a lot of the times we'll give this information and then they don't buy the plants from us anyway. So you want to make sure you're giving good information, and you don't want to waste your time and not get a sale either.
People who do that stuff. And they specialize in those recommendations. And a lot of the times there are customers too.
There are customers. And it's a conflict of interest if we're giving this information away from free and taking business away from our customers that depend on that. So sometimes people just want free information, and you can't give away your knowledge like we're doing on the podcast. Like we do every day on the podcast. You can't just give that away.
But actually, that from a marketing point of view, that's the way we chose to do it, was because now you can do it in bulk, in mass, and you can have over the course of time thousands or tens of thousands, and eventually hundreds of thousands of people listen to this stuff. And get that knowledge instead of a one-on-one interaction. So it's on our end, it's choosing the one-on-one interactions that are the most beneficial and are going to make the people the happiest, because we can make them happy, versus the one-on-one interactions where you're never going to be happy. Maybe you'll be satisfied, but you're going to wish you had a different option.
But you know, I appreciate more than anything the phone calls we get from our customer base that says, hey, I listened to this episode and thank you, I got something out of it. Or we'll have a short conversation or a short email. Even our listeners in the Facebook group, when we get to have, I've had people direct message me, and just to have like a quick interaction with that. I've even, I kind of broke my policy. I'm actually Facebook friends with a couple people from the group. Not saying not everyone send me a Facebook request, because I have a very firm no coworker, no family Facebook policy. So even Tom and I aren't Facebook friends. I'm not Facebook friends with anyone from work or anyone that I'm a relative to, so I can complain about all of you without no, but it just makes things less complicated, I think. So, but I've actually become friends with some of our listeners, which is nice to have gotten to that point, to have discussions and be on a different level with. I appreciate that we can do that.
It's just nice getting feedback, and it's nice getting suggestions, because it means that some I was going to say we're hitting a nerve, but we're not hitting a nerve. We're sparking someone else's interest, and they're guiding us where they're passionate, and then we can collaborate on some stuff, which is awesome. That's part of why we wanted to do this.
You're going to like you said, you can't make everyone happy. You're going to click with some people, you're not going to click with other people. Not everything's a match, and that's hard to handle sometimes when you want to know you want everyone to be happy, you want to be accepted.
You hear the criticisms loudest. Like in the last episode, Fran, you mentioned in the one Facebook group, someone asked for a recommendation on gardening podcasts, and then one of the people was like, "Oh, I like this one, but because he doesn't do all the crap these other ones do with the banter."
And it was almost like they were referencing our podcast, and he probably wasn't.
but it felt personal.
It felt personal, because it was like, I like this one, but he didn't say why he liked it. He said, I like this one because they don't talk about music. I don't have to hear non-interesting tidbits about their personal lives. There's not too much chatter or banter, like, and all these things. I was like, wow, they just described an episode of the Buzz,
But obviously some people like that stuff, or we would be out of this side
and people like the other ones too. There's other native plant podcasts that are different than ours, and we would never be able to do that. I'm not knowledgeable enough to do those other types of podcasts, so we do the ones, and we have a fit, and they have a fit, and I'm fine with that. That's good with that. Not saying I wouldn't love everyone to listen to us, but
so we're gonna skip the Fran's complaint portion since you just got a whole solid 15 minutes of Fran and Tom to start off.
Yeah. Wow. Well, maybe we should go to our next
I was gonna say, you want to move on, and so I guess we'll start where we always start, and that's with the plants we're vibing with this week in That's Hot.
That's hot.
Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can go first.
Sure, go ahead.
So my plant this week is blooming at our seed farm right now, and then I've remembered an interesting tidbit about it. That it's not how we grow it, but it's interesting. But the plant I chose this week was hairy beard tongue, which is Penstemon hirsutus, and which is a pretty small plant. Blooms early in the season, which is always nice. It bloomed a little later than usual in my recollection this year, because I'm guessing just because it's been so dry.
Yeah.
But on phenotypically, it just bloomed later. I don't know exactly the reasoning, but they stay pretty short. About I've never seen one that's 3 feet tall, but
it's one of those.
I guess they can get 3 feet tall.
Yeah, it's one of those plants where it's like basal foliage, and then the flower stalks
that come up, and then it has a much smaller range than I thought. It was basically the furthest south it went was Tennessee, where it's actually considered native in most of the counties. Went up to Illinois, and then went actually all the way to the northeast up to Maine.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm assuming it grows in Canada as well, but the map I looked at show the province lines. But what was interesting to me is we grow it for seed crops in an old farm field, and it flourishes. It looks awesome. We grow it in 2-inch plugs, which is a combination of the soil is a combination of peat and sand, and that might be it. I forget what else is in there, but
actually, I think it's peat, sand, and pine bark.
Okay, I think. And then and
I don't even know if there's peat in that. Actually, I'm not even sure.
There's peat in that for sure, but where I was talking to, I shouldn't say I was talking to, I was watching a presentation with Larry Weiner one time, and he showed this plant and says in nature it thrives on rocky outcrops in super thin soil. Like literally there's almost no soil there. You could probably take like a little broom and just sweep it all away. That's how little soil there is on some of these outcrops, and it'll thrive there. And you'll get situations that look like our flower field where you have thousands of stems coming up on like a little rock ledge overhanging the parkway.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. Now, since he said that, I've been looking for it in those kind of scenarios, and I've seen it once, I think, in northern New Jersey over a rocky outcrop right along a highway. But I didn't go up and climb up it to make sure that was what it was. I'm like, that kind of looks like that, so I'm gonna think it is. But very cool plant if you want to use it in your garden. Where how I have it is in a little bit of shade, but it likes sunnier conditions.
I think actually one of our listeners posted a photo. I don't know if it was at Penstemon in the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, because that's Michelle from Rutgers.
Michelle Backett.
Because that's one of the ones where the bees go in and you just have bee butts sticking out of the flowers. So she was saying she couldn't wait to see bee butts.
Oh yeah, no, that's a cool one.
That's a great choice.
Yeah, Fran, how about you?
So I went with, when I selected this, it's probably a little past it, but at the time I selected it was in its prime, which is black cherry, Prunus serotina. Which was in full bloom at the time that I saw it. It's a facultative upland, very important for Lepidoptera. I know.
Yeah, that's pretty high on that was Dr. Talmey's list of important plants for Lepidoptera.
It's native through the northeast and northwest of Texas. I did find in doing a little more research about it that this plant is considered invasive in South America. So, every plant's native to somewhere, and it's invasive outside of that area a lot of the time. So it's actually invasive in South America. Every time I see it in bloom, which is a wonderful bloom, it makes me think of growing up in Philadelphia. There was a soda company called Frank's, which I think someone bought it and you can get it again, but it's not like Frank's was the soda you could find anywhere. And they did a black cherry Wishniak soda. So as a kid, like that was a favorite. Like if you got Frank's, it was pretty awesome. So they also make a hard liqueur. You can get a hard liqueur. Like I think Dad's makes it. Dad's black cherry, hard black cherry, which is really good. So it's flowers, white racemes, yellow fall color. It's actually been a little bit of an issue the last couple of years naturally, where we haven't really been able to get seed because it starts producing the fruit and it's dropping before it becomes ripe. Like typically it ripens up and you can pick it up, or it drops off ripe. It's actually dropping its seed the last 2 to 3 years. It's dropped its seed without becoming ripe, which makes it, it's not really producing viable seed. So not really sure what's going on with that just locally, but it's been an issue. So I'm hoping that we don't see, that's a very important variety. So I'm just hoping, not variety, species. So I'm hoping that doesn't start to suffer locally.
Yeah, and now I'm pretty sure this is what it was, but my dad and we were had a little campfire last Sunday night, and we were gonna toast some marshmallows, and he had little wood skewers that he cut off a tree. Well, it was black cherry.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure one of the ways you can identify it is if you scratch the bark with your thumb a little bit, just a tiny little bit, it'll smell of like bitter almond.
Oh, okay.
And that's one way to identify.
It has somewhat of a traditional cherry bark. It has those horizontal ridges on the bark. It's like a smoother bark, darker bark with horizontal ridges on it. So if you know cherries trees, that's one of the ways to help identify it. So it's a little tell. So, but it's amazing. You think it's a tree that isn't that prevalent in your forest until you see them bloom, and then you realize how many there are right in front of your face that you just didn't notice were there. So, but that's my choice.
Yeah, very good.
So, what do you think? You want to go to?
Yeah, we got to move on because now we're running behind on time. So we're gonna go and do our botany-based current events, and of course, it's always a competition, which I've been losing as of late. So let's move along to this or that.
You can get with this, or you can get with that.
So we are going to announce the winner, and the winner of the last this or that was me. And you know what? This was the most votes we ever had.
Oh yeah.
So it sparked some interest. Here's what I get. Obviously we got the post up early too, where people could vote while it's fresh on their mind. But I think when you find topics that people are interested in, like obviously, so I won 20-7. But I don't know if they voted for me because they liked mine or they voted for me because they didn't like yours.
Yeah.
Because it seemed to strike a nerve with some people. I don't think it was meant that way.
No, definitely not. It was more to as a little bit of a joke because I wouldn't cite the New York Post often as a reputable paper.
No.
But no, it was just from the previous episode when we were talking about NYRP, and I kind of joked around how I don't like the city. But
Jason actually weighed in yesterday on that too. he shot me a quick email. So no, it's I'm glad that you're reading the articles and we're hitting on topics that you find interesting. So hopefully we can keep doing that throughout. But
so I came back with a vengeance this week.
All right.
Because I've lost now 2 in a row, which weren't close.
Actually, it's 3 in a row.
3 in a row that weren't close. Maybe one.
I'm not counting.
So I got to make sure I write the train here. We got to keep moving along.
All right. Well, I like the article that you chose this week, so I'm going to go first, and I'm going to let you go second.
All right.
So my article this week, which was supplied to me by our friend Saul. He actually sent this article to me. So
I can't wait to hear what this is about.
So it is Meet the Sheep on Governor's Island this summer by Keith Huang, I want to say. And it was published in Untapped New York. I guess Untapped is a national digital magazine, and there's a different one for each city. So again, I instead of paraphrasing, I've highlighted a couple paragraphs that I'm going to read, but it's more of a feel good. So working with the Friends of Tivoli Lake Preserve and Farm in Albany, the Trust for Governor's Island has hired 5 sheep to help control invasive plant species in Hammock Grove, an experimental urban forest adorned by 50 red hammocks, which we're seeing more and more of that, the whole hammock trend. Like in Philly, they have it. I think it's the Spruce Street right on the Delaware River, where you can go and it's all lit and you can just walk up, get in a hammock, and just chill. So have you seen that?
I haven't. I've seen people bring hammocks places. But
oh no, it's they're all out. You could just go and pick a hammock. So, but sheep naturally love plants such as grasses, phragmites, flowering plants like mugwort, sunflowers, which makes them a natural fit to join the island's weed control team. So why sheep instead of goats? According to Molly McGinnis, Director of Operations, Planning, and Sustainability at Trust for Governor's Island, sheep will be gentle on the grove because they will not ravage the more than 1,200 trees representing over 40 species in Hammock Grove. Goats, however, tend to pull up all kinds of plants and roots, even the ones that should be kept. So because sheep enjoy grazing the leafy invasive plants, the diversity of the area will stay intact, and the sheep's waste can be used as fertilizer for the trees. So sheep are able to get into the hard to reach places, making them eco-friendly and efficient option for maintaining the health of the landscape. And you're not using gas, you're not making noise. It's kind of a more natural approach. And I guess they've used it at a couple other places as well with good success. And they're moving it on. So I find it a very interesting approach. And that's what you need. You need that outside of the box approach, especially in a more naturalized public area. That will take care of some of these things. I'm sure there's some things getting munched on that maybe shouldn't be, but if they're doing more good than harm, I would take that as a win and then go in and do a little restoration.
Listening to this and reading a little bit, the first thing I thought was like, oh, it sounds like they need some deer. but no, why sheep is a better alternative is because it's a managed species. So someone is bringing the sheep there. The sheep, I would assume, it's an island, it's a populated island. So I'm assuming that they're not going to become feral and then start reproducing like crazy. No, there's going to be a farmer or whoever's going to come in and maintain that sheep population to the right number.
Yes.
And and then when they start when there's the lack of invasives there for them to eat, they're probably going to take the sheep away.
Yeah, they'll move.
So that doesn't happen with deer. So
now, speaking of deer, I was mentioning in Agatha's yard, we've been planting a lot of natives, and she has an equal amount of invasives. So the deer pressure, some of the fence is down in the properties. Deer could easily jump it anyway, but now they have a free pass through. Nothing being touched on the invasives. They've eaten back the cranberry viburnum. Like the one thing when we talk about deer pressure and them things that they tend to stay away from or eat last, like sweet pepper bush because it's a little more fragrant. Yeah, that one of the first things they ate was sweet pepper bush. So that just proves that you can never really. It depends on what's there and what they want to eat. And those are the first things that they munched on. So
going back to sheep, another interesting use for sheep that's become really, really popular is they'll use them with solar farms. And it started out just so they had grass, and instead of having someone go and mow, you'd release all the sheep and they'd mow the grass, and then mow the grass, they'd eat the grass. And it was for the solar farms, it was really important because if the grass got too tall, it would start to shade out the solar panels, and they weren't as productive. So that wasn't good. And I guess it could get into the electrical stuff on the back. And so they needed to keep the grass short. Instead of paying someone to mow it and bag it and remove the clippings, they would bring sheep in. Another thing that was becoming popular was to plant short flowering pollinator plants or pollinator friendly plants in those solar fields. And now they're even looking at ways that they can incorporate both. So you can plant stuff that might get a little bit taller, but you have the sheep coming in that are going to keep them short enough. And so now you have triple use off of that one property. Which is one of my favorite things. If you can have a mixed use where now that same acreage isn't as productive as if you were to do just the one thing for that one thing. That one thing isn't as productive, but now you have triple the outputs, but each one's, let's say you have pollinator benefit, but it's maybe not as productive as if it was all a meadow. There's solar benefit, and maybe it's not as productive if it was just solar. And you have sheep there, and maybe that isn't as productive if it was just use of pasture raised for grazing sheep, but all three of them are in the same spot. And you don't get that in a lot of instances.
And we've talked about it before on other episodes that preferably we'd rather not just have solar panels on fields that could be better used for naturalization. But if you can incorporate it and protect it, where now all of a sudden you have this area that might have been developed, and now you're able to supply pollinator-friendly plant material. I know Princeton University, I believe, use sheep on their solar fields. And there's companies, some of our colleagues have started pollinator companies that specialize in habitat for pollinators in solar fields. So it's the science is coming around, and we've been doing it more and more now. So we're learning, and it's getting better. So it's nice to see that some of these methods are being used and documented, and rather than just spraying and moving on.
And it does give us a little bit more insight of maybe how those ravenous sheep got onto Saul's property.
Oh yeah, that's true. But speaking of spraying, and I'm not trying to prevent you from presenting your article, because I think you're going to win this week, but I got in the mail, I brought it with me. I don't know if I should show it because I don't want to talk about the company's name, but it was an advertisement for spraying your property for mosquitoes, ticks, and fleas, and that's what they do. So it's saying customized treatments eliminate and repel ticks, mosquitoes, and fleas. And I would imagine any other insect or pollinator that happens to be there as well. So $50, which was a special price for the first treatment, they just come through and spray your property and make it void of insects. So it's not really helping the situation. You want to get rid of the invasives or keep that ecosystem balanced to keep that in check. Instead, they're making it worse. They're making it a wasteland.
And because then the first things to respond tend to be the invasive things in the mosquitoes. But when you do that, you're also, when you do a treatment like that, you're also getting rid of all the things that would eat those mosquitoes and eat the other insects that tend to be pests.
Yeah, and
in addition to all the pollinators as well.
Exactly. So it's, the funny thing is, I'm looking at the photo, and the applicator's not wearing any kind of respirator or mask or anything, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this as a whole. But there's companies that's their business and they're advertising, and
it's another thing. You're driving down the street, and there's a phrase that one of our future guests actually is where I heard it, but it was like lonely is the world of an ecologist, because everything that's going like everyone else is doing wrong, because you're like, oh, look at all those invasive plants, and it just makes you like really depressed, and you're like, how does no one else know this? I'm driving around, I'm seeing all the mosquito control signs on people's yards, like you used to see for like real estate signs, or if someone got a driveway, they put a sign. Well, now all these mosquito companies are doing that as well, and I'm like, oh man, if they only knew that they were killing everything else back there, all the other insects too that the birds need, and the butterflies or not the butterflies, dragonflies are going to eat. And
well, you're spraying this too, and you can't tell a bird, you can't put a sign up and say, hey, birds, don't land here today, because I just there's a reentry on this, and you can't. There's so many things wrong with it, and it just hurt my heart to see that advertisement. So and it's a company I'd never heard of, so it's a new company, so they're seeing a need and they're capitalizing on it, which what can you do? But that's mine. Why don't you go into yours?
So mine was was shared on LinkedIn by former guest and friend of the program, Marcus Gray.
Oh,
and awesome. I feel bad because someone else sent me an article, and this is the second time I didn't use an article someone sent to me, but the article they sent me, I only just read it this morning. I'm like, this is a little bit more scientific than I feel comfortable presenting within an hour. So I was like, I'm gonna hold this one off. I'll probably do it another day, because it was really, really cool.
Yeah, we're already half an hour in, and we're not even like we haven't even we still have 3 pages of notes to go through here.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm gonna do this one instead. But it was from Discover Magazine, and I guess it was a colleague of Marcus Gray's. Didn't write this article, but was interviewed in the article, and it was titled "Pollinators in Trouble. Here's how transforming your lawn to wildflower habitat can help." And basically what it summarized was, we know we need to learn more about pollinators, but we do know that having more wildflowers or native plants in your yard does help the pollinators. And we know that lawns aren't helping pollinators. And as well, we all know that we don't need as much lawn as we potentially have. There's places that we don't use, we're not utilizing to play on or to walk on or anything like that. There's those areas of your yard that are always having issues with the lawn. So why not take that out and put in some wildflowers there? And that was basically the message. And actually, so the 2 people that were profiled in the article, and I hate last names, Barbara Sharonowski and Nash Turley, they created an app that can help coach you through that process. That's called Lawn to Wildflowers, which I found this morning, and I downloaded and I was playing around with it. It was actually
I was watching,
and it basically just coaches you through that process of how to transition from grass to native plants. It even tells you some of the plants that you should use. And there's the first thing on their list on when you download the app is like a quiz game where it'll it'll ask you to identify, okay, it shows you a picture, is this a moth, or is this a butterfly, or is this a wasp? And I was like, oh, this game is going to be so easy. And I got one wrong, like the second or third question. Like,
I would have gotten that one.
Yeah,
too.
It looked like a wasp, but it was actually, it was the Texas wasp Texas wasp moth. But I got that one right.
I love the educational aspect of this, not just putting it out there saying this is how it should be. It was, hey, here's a fun way to learn.
Oh yeah,
how to do this.
Like I said, I learned that the Texas wasp moth is a Lepidoptera, not a wasp, like I thought it was when I answered that question incorrectly. But then they had as it went on, it was native bee versus honeybee, and there's other different insect identification tools. Once you got to a certain point, you could actually do pollinator counts.
Oh wow!
But then it had another section. It was like, if you want to remove your lawn, well, you can cut the sod out, or you can put down cardboard and solarize it, or you can put down cardboard covered with mulch and then just plant over the top of that. It had little lists of, you picked what area of the country you're in, it would actually give you a list of plants that were native to that area. There's a lot going on there. So if you do need help, like we were talking about, don't come to Fran and I.
Yeah.
Go download this app, and they'll be able to at least guide you a little bit into some of the stuff that might work for your area.
That's awesome. So, I love it. And it's something I played with too. And I think that's definitely a winner. Yeah. Like that's, I hope that all of our listeners download that app and play around with it. Mm-hmm. I really do. And vote for you this week. I hope
I'm going after the pity vote here.
It's not a pity vote. This is a great.
No, it's actually a really cool app. It's something, like I said, it's something I download. I want to quiz myself more on. I didn't do any of the native bee versus honeybee ones. I think I'll do pretty good with that. But as you went on to some of the other this or that's, I don't know how well I'm going to do. I'm not an entomologist. I took one entomology class 15 years ago.
I'm going to play with it over the holiday and see how I do. Now I'm curious. All right, let's keep moving. We're already way behind, so we're going to keep moving on. So one of the things that you suggested a few episodes ago that we've kind of adopted was a new segment, just where we do a listener shout out. Now that we're able to interact with our listeners and get to know some of you, we want to celebrate that. We want you. It's a community, and we want you to be a part of a community. So Tom actually came up with this segment, and it is called Listener Shoutouts.
Listener shout out.
So there's actually a funny story about the little jingle that we'll go into a little bit later. But I wanted to actually, it's torn because it's hard to pick one. I actually wanted to go into a few, but I'm going to just limit myself to one because I could easily rattle off 10 and then I'll have nothing for the next episode. So wanted to give a shout out to Katrina Majaros, and please forgive me if I butchered your last name, but I wanted to, I think she's more of a recent listener, but from listening and talking about, she was going over property she had and the property owner and being very inspired by the Prairie Preacher and listening to Doug Tallamy, that she was inspired to protect and improve her private property. And I believe she posted a photo of being a bird habitat from PA Audubon as well. So it was wonderful to see that. And we're glad that you were inspired by our guests. They inspire us. And sharing it with everyone too, and being a part of that community. She also, in another post, asked that she would like you and I to help in her garden. And there's, if you're getting me, you're not getting any. I'll talk to you, which you're getting through the podcast in your headphones anyway. But I'm just going to distract you.
Oh, that's what I thought she was referencing, is that we were helping by listening to the podcast. And instead, it was when she was on her commute.
Well, I think she said she wished we could actually help in the garden. And I'm like, you're not getting anything done because I'm just talking and distracting.
Complaining about the heat. I got some dirt under my fingernails.
I'm probably drinking a beer, talking about music, complaining. I'm probably getting you to play Frisbee, or something. We're not getting any lawn work done. I'm just a distraction. You'd probably be more help than me.
Yeah, I'm like buckled down. We gotta get this done because I got a million other things to do.
And I'm making a day out of it. So, but it did make me think of an idea that I wanted to run by you. Okay. was that maybe as we progress, we should do some kind of auction for charity to celebrate one of the organizations that we deal with, where maybe someone can get 15 minutes of Zoom time with us to help plan their property.
Well,
or even though I wouldn't say I'm an expert to do that, but maybe we can offer, hey, if you're locally, we can come to your house and offer a few suggestions of plants, or we can, you can borrow us for a day to do work at a preserve or something like that. But maybe where we offer ourselves up for bid, like maybe 5 or 10 things, and that money can go to help a good cause in the environment.
Fran and I were thinking on similar wavelengths here, because one of the things that we've tossed around is like the merch idea, and that was one of the ideas I had as well. As, hey, we don't necessarily need the money from selling T-shirts or mugs or something like that, so why not donate it to some of these organizations that are gracious with their time to come on and because we want to. That was a lot of what we want to do, is help them. So
we want to make a difference.
So and we're at a point now where we're probably big enough that we can get more than a couple quarters.
Then
donate.
What makes it tough is that we do have listeners across the country. So it's not like if you win the bid and you're in California, I'm going to come to your house.
That would be nice, though.
Unless you're willing to fly me out, but maybe we could do something like via Zoom or offer a few things that we can help with, or do a talk at a school. Like we would do that anyway, but offer it up for auction, let people bid, and then have the money go to some good causes.
I think that's
we would like
a good idea. We're going to have to flesh this out a little more and figure out what
about for our 2-year anniversary? We try to set that up for our 2-year anniversary.
That's not a bad idea.
Set up an auction, and we'll figure out some good. So if anyone has any ideas of good things that you would like, and our listeners, I love the fact that you give us, and that's why I was saying it was hard to pick just one, because a couple of our listeners has given us so many great ideas for segments and send us articles and things like that. But I'm gonna do them a little bit at a time. But if you have ideas of what you would like to see for auction, we would be happy to do that. I think we should make that happen. I really
agree.
do. All right, awesome. And who are your champions?
So mine was, and I'm actually looking up why I want to reference them, but is actually former guest, but also member of our Native Plants Healthy Planet group, and contributes a lot there, is Russell Fenari. And I posted this in the group, why I'm gonna shout him out today, and it's because May is American Wetlands Month, and which I didn't know. I guess I learned it last year, but I forgot about it.
I didn't know that.
But May is American Wetlands Month, and Russ is one of the most steadfast wetlands champions in New Jersey, probably in the country, really. And he was actually just chosen for the 2021 National Wetlands Award by the Environmental Law Institute. So that was a pretty prestigious honor. So I wanted to make sure that he got his shout out first in our group, but also on here. So, and that's I forget what episode number it was, but Russ is the chair of the New Jersey CWRP, which is Corporate Wetlands Restoration Partnership, which has done some amazing work in the state of New Jersey.
Listen, Russ is involved in so many fantastic causes, and never ever shines the spotlight on himself. And he's always kind of behind the scenes. Everyone that's involved knows who he is and what he does, but he does such great work. And sometimes you can do that kind of thing and be behind the scenes and never get recognized. So I don't know who nominated him, but I'm glad he got nominated because the amount of time that he puts in, he lives, he walks the walk, and he lives it. He deserves this. So I'm really thrilled for him.
And I did have a second shout out too. So don't think you have to win an award to get a shout out to me. The other shout out is to also a former guest, but someone on another member of the Facebook group, is Kelly Gill, because she brought us cupcakes.
She did bring us cupcakes, and they were really good cupcakes too. She really knows how to butter us up, because that was wonderful. And we always love seeing Kelly, so it was a nice surprise that she stopped in and cupcakes, and I ate more than one.
Oh, me too.
I ate more than one. So, but maybe when we do this auction thing, maybe some of our former guests would be willing to be a part of it as well. Imagine if you could get an hour Dwayne Estes' time to go through some things for charity.
Yeah.
Like maybe we can make that work. Although I would be really bummed if like whatever I'm up for auction just went really like lame. Someone bought me for $1 and it was just like, whatever. I need you to pull weeds.
I'm gonna bid it just to Fran, we're gonna play the quiet game for the next hour.
Oh my God. I don't even know if I could do that. I actually do. I don't even know if you know this. I do meditate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I do meditate. So I can be quiet, but I have to like work myself into it. So yeah, there you go. You learn something new about Fran every day. All right, you want to keep going?
Yeah, we have some listener questions, and it's not just Saul. We got another good question.
Yeah, here we go.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
You want to start off with Saul?
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of questions for you after listening to this Saul call.
Oh, yeah. This was so long ago. I kind of blank from my memory.
Yeah. So I'm gonna play this, and then I need you to answer a few questions for me. All right.
Surf City, here we come. I love this show. It's my favorite show on the radio. I hope they have enough sponsors to keep it going forever. I will be on hopefully very shortly with them. Hello? Am I on the air with Pam and Thomas, my friend, the English Muffin Man? I wanted to say, thankfully, to Thomas, who came out in that big truck and helped me so very much when I was stuck on the New Jersey Turnpike with the cedar that we had brought over from the garment district. And the police of New Jersey, the entire police department, wanted to take me away in handcuffs. And Thomas said to them, I don't think he's quite with the program. And then they said, okay, now I don't know, Thomas, what program you were speaking of, but I want everyone to know, my name is Saul. I am fully with the Native Plants program. And now, Pam, to your topic, a good friend of mine made a fortune in the oil business. Only they call it the oil business. I don't know why. So I have borrowed from him a very large drill, because you said I should be drilling into the soil and taking a sample and then putting my native plants in that way. And it's working out very well all over, except in one spot we drilled a big, and then some type of a badger or a wolverine or something is making a nest there. So we have to leave, Pam, you know how I feel. We have to leave our woodland creatures a happy home. So we will not be planting in that. But otherwise, the project is going on quite well with the soil test. And Thomas, thank you again, Mr. English Muffin Man, for coming out with the truck and getting me off the turnpike. For goodness sake, I was apoplectic about it, and Thomas calmed everybody down, and they have, fellas, you have that big truck, and he put the sewing machine on it, and it really was quite helpful. So I thank you, Thomas, my new and good friend, the English Muffin Man, and Pam Belam, the Answer Man, with all the knowledge in the noggin. I thank you as well. My name is Saul, and I will be updating you on the progress of the drilling and the soiling samples of overseeding what had been a very non-native lawn, and now is going to.
All right. One thing I will say for our listeners out there, Tom is always very calm. I've seen you in some very difficult situations, and I've never seen you actually like get mad. Like you're very like even key. Like maybe you're mad. It's just a different mad than other people's mad, but you're very
my mad is different than other people's mad.
But you're very calm and even. So if this story is true, I could see you going in there and kind of straightening everything out. But did you in fact actually help Saul?
It is true, and it's just my parents raised me to be really kind, and when someone needs help, you help as long as you can, and we do that as a nursery too. We've brought gas to people who ran out of gas. So
actually, one of our former guests ran out of gas.
So we brought him some gas. We always try and help when people need help. So I don't know how he got my number, but Saul gave me a call, and I happened to be home and got one of our box trucks and was able to get out there and use the lift gate. And I don't know who he knows in the garment district that has a sewing machine that big. But
first of all, that brings up a whole nother thing for me. Saul has so many. First of all, he's saying his property has a carriage house. He has friends in the garment district that are loaning him sewing machines. Now he has someone in the oil industry lending him a drill, a drill seeder is not the same type of drill you would use to drill for oil. It's a very different.
And I can't believe we have to clarify that.
No, two different things. But he has all these influential friends, which leads me to believe. You know what? I wonder if Saul is actually really his name. Like I'm thinking there's something weird. It's always very cryptic, like with the communes and all that. I think there's a story behind this that I need to find out. We need to do some investigative journalism here to find out what's going on.
Yeah, no, and Saul, you don't need to thank me anymore for the help. Please, you don't need to call me anymore to keep thanking me. The expired English muffins that you had hundreds of packages in your trunk for some reason were more than enough. And I do want to clarify, it was I can understand where some people would say, think I said, oh yeah, he's not quite with the program, could be receive a negative connotation, but that wasn't actually what happened. I was trying to convince the police officers that he was Gene Wilder. They asked if he was on Hawaii 5-0. I said, no, he's not on that program. So a little miscommunication there between Saul overhearing what I said. And
that was a better connection we typically have for Saul. And I was able to hear what he was calling me now, which is Pam Belam, the answer man. So Pam Belam was the original drummer of the seminal psychobilly punk band, the Cramps. So I guess Saul is a punk fan. Some of his references are really hard to. Being a music fan, I just like once I understood what he's saying, I'm like, oh, that's what he's calling me. I hope he doesn't really think, because Pam Belam was female. So, like.
You aren't it. So it's, but we have another caller this week,
too. We do have another caller. You ready?
Hello, Pam and Tom the Muffin Man. This is Doom, calling from the Garden of Despair. Why is Pogon Virginicus a good plant? I think one of you and the guest have identified it as a favorite. If it were not native, wouldn't we be decrying it as invasive? Doesn't it shoot out poisonous root juice that kills other plants and prevents germination of good natives? I see it coming up in a prairie restoration, and I fear for the restoration's life. Should it be vanquished? And if so, how best to slay the monster?
I love that our listeners took up the challenge to do it, because we did lay that down on the last buzz that someone really should use a voice changer and start calling in. I'm a little my two quick takeaways from this. One, I'm really surprised with a name like Doom that you would be upset of something being bad. Poisoned, being poisoned. I would think that they would love poisonous plants and maybe invasives and hope that the restorations don't work. Like they were on the other side of the fence on this one. So I thought that was really interesting, but I think it's interesting that I feel like our listeners have now out-educated me.
Yeah.
Like they know more than I do because I'm hearing some of these things. I was like, what? I didn't know about this. Like, and I love that the amount of education and growth that our listeners have and how much that they've learned and they're continuing to learn, that it sparked me to have to do some research because I didn't really know. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't know that the roots excreted a poison to help them outcompete other plants. I knew they were an early successional species.
Yes.
So I knew they had some kind of competitive advantage, but I didn't know it went that deep.
And I think that's the important thing to remember when discussing this, that Pogon Virginicus or broom sedge is a very important, it's important as a pioneer species, like an early successional species. So you have to remember the steps of succession, and it has its purpose when it's young. So although the older foliage isn't really palatable, young foliage is to bison and deer, and it's very important in that early successional way. So every plant has a place and every plant has a purpose, and it's important to remember that. And I'm not saying that sometimes it gets used incorrectly, because I'm sure it does. If we didn't know that as plants people, I'm sure there's a lot of engineers or architects that maybe don't know that as well. So that's something that you kind of have to learn, maybe make a few mistakes. But there are plants, I'm not surprised that it does that though, because there are plants that have adverse effects on other plants, beech, if you're planting under a black walnut, things like that makes it difficult to have other plant communities around it. That's kind of natural. Like, we know that plants communicate, and they communicate with certain plants. So it's like a community like anything else. So, but every native plant, in my opinion, has a purpose in the right place. Yeah. So I don't know if you have any.
And it was, we actually used it. I think it might have been me that used it as a, that's hot, because in the wintertime it gets like a golden color, it really glows in the sun. And it was Daryl from Sunset Farmstead who said that was his, I think he said it was his favorite native plant, because in a cultivated setting, like in a garden, oh man, it can really look good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing, especially in the winter. You go by some of these old fields where it's in that stage of early succession, hasn't been farmed for probably a year or two, maybe a little bit more, and you see a ton of Pogon Virginicus.
Yeah.
And but you let it go on, and then you start getting some shrubs and some dogwoods and those kind of things start to cut through. So
knowing it's an early successional, that means that there are things that are willing to shade it out and outcompete it, that it will slowly move on from that. So as a pioneer species. So just remember that maybe you don't want to do a full scale restoration just using that, but maybe that's one you need to use sparingly or not at all in certain situations.
And then I for vanquishing it, I would think you probably wouldn't want to get rid of all of it, but some ways that are common to get rid of some of those things over time is fire and mowing, and even some, I'm not a big fan of disking, but like light disking can kind of open up the soil a little bit more, and it keeps it in a stage of succession a little bit. You open some soil up, so you get some new early succession. Some other spots are gonna move on. If you have a meadow, typically you don't want the emergent shrubs or the early successional shrubs to come up and early successional trees to come up. So that's where mowing, fire, disking, that's where that can come in and keep it as a meadow.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Now I hope Doom calls in again. I hope this is reoccurring. I don't know who it is. And I kind of like that.
That was a little scary for me. I don't know.
I was a little under your bed.
If the lights were out, I might have peed a little. But.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, moving on.
Wait, I think someone has to call in as the bird lady. Someone has to call in as the bird lady from. We'll get the vampire Lestat calling in and the bird lady from Mary Poppins.
And then we're going to turn into a radio morning show with Weather on the 9.
It's Weather on the 9. All right. Let's see. Let me see where we're at time-wise. We did have actually not fully prepared, but a topic somewhat prepared. We're already about an hour in. Do you want to touch on it?
We can talk about it for about 10 minutes. It is something we want to talk about more.
And one of our listeners actually suggested this, and it was just the use of plastics in the nursery trade, which is a very, I think that's a very touchy subject for a lot of nurserymen, actually. Oh, yeah. And it's because it is a problem. It is a lot of waste. And when you think of container plastic, flat plastic, plastic that covers greenhouses.
Mhm.
There is a ton of plastics that are used in our industry.
Mhm.
The problem is there's not a lot of good alternatives.
Yeah.
And I think, or if there are some alternatives, they could be a little more cost prohibitive.
Mhm.
We're seeing with COVID and the supply, or the break in the supply chain, prices have increased in a lot of places.
Oh yeah.
And there's only so much. Listen, I'll be honest, and it's a shame that this is true, but I started in the nursery industry in February 1989.
Mhm.
And the prices that we were selling 2-inch shade trees for wholesale in 1989 was no different than what we were selling them for in 2005, to 2010, because that is something that people still consider a farm commodity, and they want to pay farm commodity prices. But there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a value to it. And it's a shame. Like, now we're just starting to see pricing go up because you have to. Like, you want people to produce these plants. You want them to stay in business. It costs something to do that.
There was a statistic I saw a couple years ago, and it was about poinsettias for Christmas. But it was saying if poinsettias had gone up at the same rate of inflation as other home goods, like refrigerators, dishwashers, TVs, those kind of things, what would have cost like $5 back in 1980 would cost $47 today. So you think about like how much everything else costs in your life, but plants relatively are the same price as they used to be. They've gone up slightly, but
now
nowhere near the same rate as everything else.
And listen, this, and I'm going to be honest about this, and I'm not, I don't have anyone in mind. I'm not making a knock on anyone, but anyone can be a nursery. Anyone can grow plants, and a lot of people are really good at growing plants, but they're not very good at business. So they don't know what it costs to grow a plant. I mean, for the longest time, like throughout our history, it's hard to say what it costs to grow a specific plant. Like, if you don't know what your costs are to grow something, because there's a lot of factors, because you have to factor in your own time. And if you don't value your time, you're not charging enough for that plant. So, but all it takes is a few people that aren't good business people to sell plants cheap, for everyone to have to sell plants cheaper in order to stay in business. So it's, as an industry, you have to be together and value yourself and your time to do that. So that's definitely one issue. And we're kind of getting away from the issue that we wanted to talk about. But and I don't know really where to start with that. Like, we know it's an issue, and not all of the plastics that are used, I think part of it is there's so many types of pots and so many types of plastics used that not all the plastics that are used are even recyclable.
Oh yeah. That's one of the things. Like, the recycling system, I guess, was created by the oil the oil business as a way to, more of a publicity thing than anything. And now it's become something where you can recycle. There was something I saw on recycling was saying, oh yeah, we recycle like 10 times more than we did 20 years ago, but we also use like 30 times more plastic than we did back then. So we haven't reduced the concept of that the three arrows you see is reduce, reuse, recycle being one part of the three. We are doing very little reuse as a population, not just a nursery business, and we're doing very little reduction. We're doing way more recycling, but we're also doing so much more consumption. But from the nursery perspective, it's, Frey mentioned before, there aren't a lot of alternatives. You can grow it in the ground, you can grow it in a container, which is 9 times, or probably 99 times out of 100 going to be plastic. And
there were biodegradable pots. I think they probably still exist. I remember them being used in the 90s, that it was a pot that was biodegradable, that you could just plant the whole plant in the ground. You didn't have to take it out. The problem is when you're growing plants and actively watering them, and then it's not like, it's different if it's a contract grow, and even contract growers get postponed 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The pots only have so long of a shelf life. So you're growing in these biodegradable pots that get broken down before you even sell the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an issue in that way. In theory, how it's supposed to work, it should work well. I know your father is using, there's a system called Ella pots, which I think is a very interesting.
Yeah, and that's a paper pot, and he's using it for another business he has, but it's a paper pot that's grown in a plastic air tray. Now you can reuse the air trays until they're too banged up that you can't use them anymore. But you basically use them indefinitely. It's once they are too damaged, you can no longer use them. But as long as you keep them nice, you can keep using them. And then the paper pot is filled with a soilless media, and then it'll actually root prune itself. But it's kind of the same thing. If you don't turn it around fast enough, there's still issues with that system.
Like, I think the people that use that product well are annual growers, because those plants are growing, being sold, and plant it right away.
Yeah.
But if it's a perennial and you're growing that, then it becomes an issue overwintering, because the roots grow out. They're supposed to grow out and stop, but they don't necessarily stop growing.
Yeah.
And then you have exposed roots going into the winter, which is, unless you're going to put them in heat, which is cost prohibitive and wasteful. You know, you want to be able to have them, let them go dormant and cover them up. You know, but there's more area for root damage over the winter in harsh winter conditions. So it works in some conditions, but not all conditions. But at least it's a step in the right direction. One of our listeners mentioned bioplastics, which I don't know a whole lot about.
Yeah, I just read a little bit about it. It's like it'll be starches, and they'll create these bioplastics. But
and I guess she was saying that a lot of the oil companies bought up the patents on.
Yeah, what I'd always heard is they just weren't developed enough to actually come out. But that might be the reason why they're not developed enough. In
researching there, and a lot of the research we did, there was a great study put out that Tom and I both read. Was it through Landscape Architect or Landscape Nursery? I can't remember. It's on my desk.
It's on my desk too.
But it was a great study going into just the use of plastics in nursery. So, you know, the bioplastics industry has grown from 4 billion to an expected 15 billion by 2023, which is huge. But does that mean more? What that doesn't tell you, though, is it taking more of the plastic market, or is the other end of the plastic market growing exponentially as well? So I don't know if it's shifting or not, but from what I heard, that bioplastics still have to go to landfills. So I don't know. I know there's pots made out of coconut fiber, but I don't know how well they break down, because coconut doesn't it loses its strength, but it doesn't break down. Like, from what I understood, if you threw coconut fiber on the ground, it'd still be there 20 years from now. It just would have no tensile strength.
Yeah, I had a classmate in college whose family made pots out of cow manure as a byproduct.
Wow.
And but it was the same kind of thing. It just broke down over time, but it was great because you could just plant them right in the ground. But there's a lot of ways, and I will say, we do. In theory, we recycle a lot of the plastics we have here. If you look at them, they have the triangle. Most of them are 5s and 6s for the type of plastic, which I forget what kind of plastic that is. And they go to a recycling plant.
Yeah,
I don't know what happens to once they get there, and if they're actually recycled or not. But
the problem,
in theory, we are recycling.
Part of the problem is like nurseries are. Yeah, it is a problem for nurseries, but those plants are being sold and going out all over the place. So. We have no idea what the end user is doing with those pots. I don't know.
That's another good point, because they're going all over the place, and we get asked all the time. I guess I should change what I was going to say a little bit. We'll get asked if we reuse our pots by customers and they can bring them back, and we don't, for a handful of reasons. One's our potting process is very automated. So the machinery we have can't pull the pots apart. Once those pots are dirty, they're like almost glued together. You cannot get them apart. Even by hand, it's very, very difficult to get them apart. So we can't actually physically get them apart to use them again. The second aspect is especially one of the biggest reasons we'll have pots on hand is because plants have died of typically of disease or insect infestation, and now you're opening up. You say you had a fungal root rot in the plant that was growing in that pot, you put it aside, you go reuse it, there's still going to be the potential for that unless you treat it. and then that's a long process that's takes a lot of time and is potentially dangerous too.
The pots really should be sanitized if you're going to reuse them, and that opens up a whole nother thing. So it's I think everyone's realized for a long time that it's a problem. And now it's funny because now you get all these pots that are thicker pots, heavier pots with marketing colors and logos to stand out, creating you know what, even the amount of nursery tags that are used in this industry. Everyone loves the big informative label with the photo and everything about it. That's all plastic use that is just unnecessary. And it's, I know the nursery that created, they have warehouses filled with plant. The amount of plastics being used, we only, knowing that our plants go mainly to restorations, we're sparingly on the amount of on the
nursery tags.
It's if you're sending 50 containers, maybe 5 of them have it,
and they're little tags too. They don't. It just says what the plant. It identifies the plant, and that's it.
So our customers, if there's things that are similar looking, that they can at least say, no, this is this. It's for identification purposes. You know, so that's another big issue that people love, and they don't think about what goes into the tag. You're not putting a tag that's 4x8 in the ground next to your plant. I'm sorry, there's no need for that. That's what we have the internet for. It should probably be a little like QR code where you can just take a picture of that and have it go right to a website. And
I know they've experimented with that too, with the QR codes, and I don't think a lot of people like them. But there's a lot of research that goes into those plant tags and making things go the right way.
Yeah, so it's been an issue for a very long time. There hasn't been a better alternative to come out. Whoever figures this out, I hope it gets figured out in our lifetime and we get to see it. But
it's something I continue to, when we talked about those paper pots earlier, that was something I looked into, and it wasn't going to work for what we were trying to do. It's really unique idea, but
you want it to work.
We were actively looking for something to work. We just aren't the people who are going to develop that process. Someone will develop it at some point.
They will, and it's going to be wonderful. But I don't think anyone's oblivious to the amount of plastic use. You know, for something that's so sustainable and does so much good, it does generate a lot of waste. And like you said, you can do B&B, even that you can hand dig, but there's a lot of wire baskets. There's a lot of non-biodegradable twine being used. I don't know what the answer is. There's just so much. I just hope I live to see the day that it gets worked out. So I know we didn't solve any world problems with that, but it was more of just, hey, let's approach this and let's talk about it and be cognizant of it when you're purchasing plants, what you do with that pot when you're done with it.
That's a great thing for the home gardener, is that's where you can reuse that stuff. If you're doing stuff at home and you've been thinking about doing some more things from seed, well, you have all the supplies. You don't need to go out and buy. And I don't even know where a home gardener would buy pots and that kind of stuff. There's places, but I don't think it's very easy to get them. But that's a way you can reuse some of that stuff, and at least it's getting some more life out of it, not just like you think about all the plastic water bottles that people use and the shopping bags that are going to be banned in New Jersey, which is great in my mind. They still got to figure out alternatives, but there's there was a book, I've referenced it like in one of our first Buzz episodes, called Plastics, and the woman set out to record in a journal everything, or she wasn't going to touch plastics for an entire day. And she realized within like 5 minutes of her day starting, she'd already broken that rule 3 times. So then she instead decided to write everything she touched that was plastic. And then it was just a staggering list of things that she touched throughout her normal day.
Know who might be a good future guest, and they're based right in Trenton, New Jersey. And I can't remember the name of the company. It's like Terra something, but I think it was a Harvard college student or a Princeton college student who dropped out of college and started selling organic fertilizer. And all the products he uses, like the spray bottles, are reused bottles, and they make like kids like school planners out of Capri Sun containers and Dorito bags and pencil thing. Like it's all reused material, refurbished. Like they make suit coats out of paper bag, thing. So it's really interesting cycles, and he made more doing that than he would have what he was majoring in college in Ivy League. But I know it's right in Trenton, New Jersey. My kids actually toured the plant
that's pretty cool
for
that's
Boy Scouts.
An interesting idea.
So, but it started out where he was noticing worms in plants that he had and what they do and how he was like, why doesn't anyone harness this technology? And it kind of grew from there. So it was more of a sustainable thing. Cool. So maybe we could do that.
Yeah. One last thing I'll leave people with recycling, because you can ask my wife, I'm like a recycling police officer. Is the wish cycling is just as big a problem as people not recycling. Most of the things that you get recycled, and this is at home, end up getting thrown out and going to the landfill at the recycling plant because they either aren't clean enough, it's the wrong thing, and they can't go through and say, oh, there's a yogurt container that someone didn't clean out enough, let me go pick that one thing out, because it just takes too much time, it's too much labor. So they have to basically throw out that entire bin of things when that happens. That, and then people recycling things that they can't recycle. Like I know for the longest time it was like toilet paper tubes where because of the glue you couldn't recycle them. I think you can now in some areas.
At the time, and again, we have a recycling plant not that far from us, and my kids toured it for Boy Scouts. And the big one they were talking about, the big was time suck, was the water bottle caps. And I don't know why they haven't figured out.
I think they did. They figured out a way they could squish them and the cap would pop off. Because it was only a couple years ago
to pop them off, but they weren't using it. I don't know why they don't have a cap that you can use. But they were literally squishing the bottles and popping the caps off and disposing of the caps because they weren't recyclable.
Yeah, that was like a long thing. You had to take the cap off for the water bottles. And people think, oh yeah, I'm helping because I'm recycling this. But if it's a yogurt container and you didn't clean it out all the way, or if it's a pizza box and you can rip off the non-greasy top, but you can't recycle the greasy bottom. But people recycle the whole thing anyway.
Boxes,
Like I'll see it, and like my neighbor has it in a recycling can, and I'll pick it out sometimes when I feel like it, just because it's like, oh, I know that's all going to get thrown out if I don't. So don't just recycle things because you're like, oh, it's cardboard, it's plastic, I can recycle it. Make sure it's something that you can recycle in your area. If you're going to recycle it, because if you're doing that, you're just as bad as the people not recycling at all, because it's all getting thrown out anyway.
Totally. So hopefully we cast some light on that, and it gives you something to think about. And again, we always say do your own research, look into it a little bit more. We just wanted to lightly touch it. We didn't have the time to, I guess, prepare like we normally would, but we knew enough that we could have at least a short conversation about it. So you want to do a pod deck?
Let's do one quick.
We're about an hour and 15 minutes in. So looks like no matter what we do, we go an hour and a half, no matter what we say we're going to do. So I actually remembered the pod deck cards this time. Let's see. Yeah, can't do that.
Well, I feel like you're really filtering out the cards here now.
It's one where it's giving you an idea for another episode.
Okay.
So you couldn't really.
We have enough ideas for other episodes.
Interview your biggest competitor. We may have actually already done that.
Yeah.
Share your bucket list.
Oh wow.
So it'd have to be
tomorrow.
What's that?
What's the phrase? I live for today, not live for tomorrow. I don't actually do that.
So bucket list, but we have to make it industry related. So let's, I've never thought about that, but I think we could probably spend a couple minutes on that. You okay with that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So there has to be some, like, I have never seen a natural prairie, and I would love to see that. Like, I've been to Yellowstone, which I love, but there's a lot of state parks and more natural preserved area. Like, I would love to see the redwoods. That's definitely a bucket list for me. I need to see that. I want to see that in my lifetime. Those are the type of things, I guess, bucket lists that I would like to make sure I accomplish or see, and introduce my kids to that, so that they have a respect and an awe for nature. I've never seen the Grand Canyon. Have you? I know Agatha has. She's been to the Grand Canyon. Never been.
I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I've been to a couple of national parks when I was a kid with my parents. But yeah, I'd say that would be something for me, is to see more of these national parks, see some of these more natural ecosystems. But you look at our national parks, and they're saying they have all these invasive problems there, and a lot of them too. So I wouldn't say it's like unadulterated wilderness like a lot of people think it is, and it's not quite that. But yeah, maybe we got to hook up with Dwayne Estes and visit some of the prairies in the southeast that they've been, because they've preserved some remnant prairies, and then they've created some more. But for me, it's probably it's like, I guess it's somewhat selfish, but seeing this nursery grow, because the larger this nursery gets,
means you're making a difference.
Yeah, the more native plants that are getting out there. I want to see more competition too.
Yeah,
like I think we're at a point where this industry is really about to blow up. It's just there's more and more of these native nurseries coming along every year. And realistically, if there's going to be a big difference made, and I'm alluding to something Fran said just earlier, we need to have, what's the right way to say this? We need to have more business people enter the space. And find out the actual marketing behind native plants, and which is happening slowly. But you have a lot of, right now, most of the nurseries you're looking at have people who are really love plants and are making a difference at a really local level. If you break down the horticultural industry to native plant nurseries and non-native plant nurseries, the nurseries that are growing non-native plants have so much money and marketing behind them, and we're not going to outcompete that unless we get some of that too. Some really bright minds that know how to infiltrate that space.
And we actually had one of our colleagues who we really look up to approach us at a trade show one time and just say, hey, look what the wine industry did, the California wine industry did by grouping together and marketing. Why aren't we doing that? You know, and it's a really good point. And especially, you know, the story that Daryl shared with you about one of his customers that's a garden center that has been buying Daryl's native plants and saying he doesn't personally get it, but customers are walking by things that he thinks they should buy, and they're walking past them. And
he's like, oh, they're walking by these things that are in full flower, and they're walking over to your plants and buying your native plants. And I'm like, I don't know why, they're just green. But that's the mentality. It's got to be in flower. It's got to have long lasting blooms. It's very, the American gardener, the world gardener overall, but the American gardener has been very selfish for the last century. And it's time to have like an awakening to be more selfless, and you're gardening for other things. It's not just so I can go outside and look at pretty flowers. It's so I can see birds and butterflies and know that they're getting something out of it too. But we had this whole discussion at home the other day. There's aphids on our Heliopsis, and it's like, and I'll put this video in the group. And this wasn't on Heliopsis, this is other aphids, but then I'm looking at this plant and there's covered in aphids, but there's these ants that are going and just massacring these aphids. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is like, it's really making a difference because it's supporting the whole food chain. Those aphids are a nuisance to our plant and can damage some plants to a point where they're going to die at some point. But you have things that are eating those aphids too. And if you take out the aphid, well, if you take out the plant, the whole thing goes away. If you take out the aphid, then everything above the aphid goes away. And you have a nice looking plant that you'll have some bees and butterflies visit later in the year, but is it really serving its whole function?
And that's what you want to see. You want to see the whole food chain life cycle,
that's
ecosystem
what Benjamin
functioning.
Vogt says that I really agree with, is it's not a pollinator garden unless it's supporting larval stage 2. So you need the caterpillars, you need all that other stuff that's supporting the whole food web, not just, oh yeah, we have some butterflies and bees. They're cool and typically an indicator that the rest of it's happening, but
it's a good part. It's part of it though. It's just a good part. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. What do we have coming up in the future? Well,
hopefully we're going to have an episode with on native habitat management. Coming up.
That should be our next one. Hopefully
that should be our next one if we can finally get it scheduled.
And we're planning something for pollinator.
And we have a pollinator week extravaganza with some of our, and it has not been solidified at all yet, but the idea is to have some of our past guests that are pollinator experts to basically just do throw it all on the table about pollinators for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to
that. So that's what we have coming up in the future. And I think that's, it's funny. Every time we sit down and we go, we need to do a Buzz episode. What do you want to talk about? Do we have anything to talk about? And we fill an hour and a half. Without, I hope at least some of that was good.
Yeah,
good
I'm sure it was good. Yeah, hopefully they didn't all tune out when we started complaining.
What a way to start off. Hey, listen to me complain.
Yeah. Well, poor me. Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you everyone listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet presented by Pinelands Nursery.
I would like to give a huge thank you to RJ Comer for our Buzz theme music. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your music. From what I understand, he's working on some new music. So maybe sometime in the near future, we'll get new music. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, and also Native Plants _Healthy Planet. And YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. We have the question and comment line, and it was nice to get a call other than just Saul this week. Keep it up. Call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. We also put that in the show notes. Give us a call, ask a question, leave a comment. When we pick your question or comment, we'll play it on a future episode of The Buzz, and we will respond. And man, huge new turnout for the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. We had to post a little reminder of the rules. Please no gratuitous self-promotion. We're okay. We know we have people that have businesses that promote what they do, or hey, I have an upcoming
I have a couple upcoming webinar event, those kind of things. Yeah.
Or the group I belong to is doing this, or look at this, or hey, that's what it's about. It's a community, but you have to be a part of the community. If you're only posting self-promotion, trying to get people to go to your thing, but you're not a part of the community overall, then we have a little bit.
Fran will put his foot down.
I'll have a little hissy fit. So just make sure, it really was about the podcast and creating a community about that. So we
wanted to hear a lot of feedback about things we talked about and things you agreed with, disagreed with, guests we had on,
or things that you want to hear us talk about, or and we love seeing the difference it makes in your lives.
And I'll put a personal thank you out there to everyone who's not posting. Well, it's a little late now, but not posting pictures of garlic mustard and asking us, hey, what kind of native plant is this? Because I was getting fed up with it in some of the other groups. Fed up with seeing it. I didn't say anything about it,
but I read these other groups because it's like watching a train wreck. I was telling Tom, someone posted a photo of a non-native and was complaining that worms and bugs were eating it, and to help them. And I was just like, I just wanted to make popcorn and sit there and just watch all day, and I'm glad we don't have that in our group. We've kept it really good. I'd like to keep it that way. It's still a small community, but it keeps getting larger every day. So you're going to have issues. You are going to have issues as you move along, but we really haven't had major issues. So I like that.
Yeah. So you can listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or really wherever you consume your podcast. When you're there, please subscribe, leave a review, and if you want to, or we ask that you share it with a friend, because that really helps spread this message and gets us a little bit further in our journey of getting more people on this native plant train.
And we appreciate everyone coming along on that journey with us. We really do. This has been, when we started this, did you look at it as a journey? I didn't.
No, when we've said this a bunch of times, I don't even know if people listen to this part. They might have skipped through already.
Yeah.
But when this is our secret tip. I've heard other podcasts do this. They're like, oh yeah, after the credits, I tell you a secret. So this is our little secret. Is our idea was we want to have a lot of these organizations that we get to work with that are doing some amazing things. Here's a way that we can highlight them. Selfishly, it builds a little goodwill in between them and us, and when we could come in person, we'd bring them around, show them the nursery, and maybe they'll say, hey, I'm not going to buy plants from anywhere else. I'm just going to go to Pinelands Nursery. That was the selfish aspect of it. But the other aspect was we had so many people who wanted to get involved with native plants, had like a fringe knowledge of native plants and didn't know where to go. and they didn't know their thing. They didn't know if they maybe like butterflies and the Monarchs in the Rough was a place, or maybe they like insects and then they could go to Xerxes Society, or they like ducks and they could go to Ducks Unlimited. They're all working with native plants. It was just different channels of getting to the same thing.
And we were talking about that frustration about not being able to help people. So we have this social media presence, and most of the people following us were people that weren't getting our plants and we couldn't sell to. So talk about frustration. They wanted our help and we couldn't help them. This was our way to be able to help them and help our customers as well.
And it was great seeing that in the Facebook group this past week when someone said, oh yeah, when I listened to your episode, it got me connected with the Audubon Society, and I got this sign saying it's bird habitat, and that made me feel so good, because I'm like, that's exactly what we were trying to do.
That's what we were hoping to do. But so many of our guests not only inspired you, they inspired us. And we realize, we're craving this education as well. So a lot of our guests, for selfish reasons, are things we want to know more about. And it's a journey where we're continually growing, and you're growing with us. Some of you may have even surpassed us. Which I think that is fantastic.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
But, and it's some of the questions I get, I was like, man, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, but that's great. That's fantastic.
But with that, everyone, thank you. I am Tom.
And I am Fran. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us. We will see you again on the next one. I believe it will be a rooted discussion. And until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.